Hello, and welcome to today's web seminar, How to Achieve More Test Coverage with NoCode 2.0, sponsored by testRigor and featuring Artem Golubov. Before our presentation begins, let me quickly explain the console. The panel on the right has a feature to chat and to ask questions. If you happen to minimize this panel, just click on the chat button to reopen it. Should you experience any technical issues, feel free to send me, Sarah Crocker, a private chat, and I'll be happy to help you. There will be a Q&A session at the end, but feel free to enter your questions at any time throughout the presentation. To optimize your bandwidth for the best viewing experience, please close any other applications you may have running in the background. This event is being recorded and will be made available to watch on demand. Once the recording's ready, you'll get an email with instructions to access it. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to Artem.
Hello, everyone. And without further ado, I would like to start sharing my screen. And I'm already sharing. And I'll key it off and start the presentation. All right, so how to achieve more test coverage with NoCode 2.0, and we'll talk about what NoCode 2.0 is and how does it help exactly. What kind of test automation we will be talking about? We'll talk about web, mobile, and desktop automation. We will not cover API and a lot of other types of automation. And well, first of all, what is NoCode 2.0? And as you know, technology is not standing still. Yesterday, we were like old style record and play tools. You can still probably see things like Selenium ID and stuff like that, which does have a record feature where you can click on certain sequence of steps and you will get some code. Well, people still remember those, and they feel, and the practice is that even though you can record something, whatever you had recorded is not usable at all. It's kind of not a good code, and it will break almost immediately on the next run. So NoCode was the next wave where companies were attempting to use some algorithms and some supposedly AI in order to improve on locators, in order to attempt to solve that problem. And it did help in a lot of cases, but it still it introduced another issue where those no-code tools made it very rigid, and whatever code was produced was very hard to update, maintain, and you would need to re-record. And finally, the NoCode 2.0 wave of low-code, no-code tools introducing a new way of helping people to achieve fast, being able to create test cases faster. Not only you can create tests faster, but you can also spend dramatically less time on test maintenance, far less than even if you were to write this code from scratch yourself in any system whatsoever. Moreover, NoCode 2.0 tools is also helping with test maintenance and with adapting to new functionality. Not only, as I mentioned, you'll spend less time on test maintenance in general, but also it would be order of magnitude easier to adapt to new functionality compared to, again, even the code you would write yourself. So NoCode 2.0 is for real addressing all of the problems that record and play was trying to address, but does solve all the problems of no code in general, making it easy to use and very helpful. Okay, so there are challenges sometimes introduced by some systems that make people think that certain cases are not automatable, which is not necessarily the case. Things like two-factor authentication, including text messages and authenticator apps, capture third-party systems, quickly changing UI, and so on and so forth. This is all can be automated with modern systems for testing purposes. All right. What's going on with test automation today? Did you know that only 30% of all test cases are automated today in 2022, and 70% on average are tested manually. That has been confirmed by Forrester and a lot of other people on their research as well as it's constantly being confirmed by our research. So on average, companies have around 30% of test automation. And that is actually a huge problem because this results in $1.7 trillion in losses due to software bugs in production, because it's technically not possible to retest everything manually without automation and doing it automatically one way or another. So there is a huge problem, and well, we already have Selenium. What's the problem? Why not? Well, it's not that simple because even if you can write 1,000 tests, which is a challenge we'll discuss in a second, it would introduce a test maintenance nightmare. You wouldn't be able to deal with that properly, and we see a lot of companies are abandoning their Salesforce test suites, and sometimes where we have close to 90% of test coverage migrating to testRigor because of test maintenance problem. All right, so what's the existing situation right now? So because if there are 30% of test cases covered, there is not much usually choice, right? Whereas either too much manual, which is a lot of bugs in production, long release cycles, not enough test coverage, or usually it's a Selenium Appium or record and play tools where it's not too much maintenance, exceptionally hard to maintain, and relatively slow to create. Okay, so first of all, let us talk about where are those problems coming from. What is the key reasons why only 30% of test cases are automated today in 2022, which is a shocker because automation had been around from 90s, is not something new. And there are two main reasons. Of course, there's multiple, but we believe there are two reasons that mainly affect that. Reason number one, if you're looking into Selenium code for login test, is you have to be an engineer to be able to write this code. Moreover, this is a lot of code. And mind you, this is very simplified example. If you were to write actual login code, it probably would be 2-3 times more than it is on the screen right now. So it's a lot of stuff to write, but most importantly, only engineers can do it. Moreover, it's not the whole picture. Not only only engineers can write the code, but if the test fails, nobody except those QA engineers can understand what is going on. So basically, you can't just run the test and get the value out of it immediately by anyone. You have to involve QA engineers to decipher stack traces to understand what's happening. So that, of course, doesn't add up to neither collaboration nor speed of delivery. However, we believe the largest issue here is not even that. The largest issue is reliance on details of implementation. If you look specifically here, you can see that code relies on IDs, name, and XPath in here. And basically, there are huge issues with that. And that is, it is conceptually incorrect. If you are relying on details of implementation, that means that what you are testing is how certain page or screen was implemented in some time in the past, but you are not testing actual end-to-end flow from end user's perspective. So that is a huge issue because as soon as those details of implementation change, the test would break, even though from end user's perspective, everything is perfectly fine. And basically what and why would details of implementation change, right? For example, like we are relying on IDs, you might say, what can possibly go wrong? And but there are a lot of examples. For example, if engineers are migrating from Angular to React framework, you might lose completely ability to use by IDs, and your IDs would disappear. In some frameworks like ASP.NET, it's not even possible to use IDs in some cases. And most importantly, in 2022, for performance reasons and productivity reasons and common sense, majority of engineers are using libraries to render their controls. Right, so they're not writing basic things from scratch anymore. So we're using libraries where everything is already done for them, and all basic stuff is pre-implemented. And think about it, if engineers rely on the libraries, then they need to update the libraries for one reason or another, let's say for a bug fix, or was a security issue, so they're forced to migrate to a newer version, or anything else. The library might change how it renders the controls, and therefore it will inevitably break the automation, even though from end user's perspective, everything is perfectly fine because it's the same control, it's just better newer version. This is definitely not what you want to deal with, and it's quite a gigantic overhead because think about it, it might break a lot of tests, and QA engineers would need to go in and basically fix the implementation details, figure out how to now fix their code in order to adapt to a new way of dealing with things in the UI. Now, compare that with modern NoCode 2.0 frameworks like testRigor. testRigor is executable specification in English, ran the same way as you would execute the instructions in English manually. That means that you just write what needs to be done in English. testRigor would parse it, understand it, and execute them exactly the way how you would do it as a human, avoiding reliance on details of implementation. Anyway, so let me tell you why test maintenance is a gigantic problem, far more than you might have realized. Initially, when you're building your tests, be it with classic older no-code systems 1.0 or with Selenium, you might be building tests relatively fast initially. However, once maintenance challenge start to pile up, system keeps changing. More and more engineering time is now dedicated towards updating to match the new way of doing things. And basically, QA engineers spend more and more time fixing the code rather than writing a new one, up to a point where at around 300, 350 tests per person, it's a full-time job to just maintain the tests. Think about it. So you had, if you need to achieve your test automation, you hired a great QA engineer. Engineer would build you, let's say, 350 tests, and bam, this person is now on full-time on maintenance. So now you hire a second QA engineer again. After 350 tests, the same problem. The third engineer, 350 more, and you get into the same problem. Now you have 1,050 tests automated, and you have 3 people full-time just maintaining the tests. Now imagine that your total number of documented tests is 3,000. So you still need to test 2,000 tests manually, and you run out of budget. So you can't hire any more QA engineers. And mind you, QA engineers are more, it's a tougher problem to find and retain compared to regular engineers. It's harder to find, and it's much harder to retain compared to engineers. So this basically a problem in itself, which might be impeding your progress in general, but the fact that you run out of budget and you can't build any more automated tests, that is the core problem of why people cannot get past 30% of test coverage. So this is exactly what modern no-code 2.0 systems address. So they not only help you to build tests faster and use your manual testers to do that, but also they actually solve test maintenance problem for you, so your employee can continue to build tests. Now, for example, testRigor, our customers spend 200 times less time maintaining tests versus Selenium on average. And that means that even though a person had built a lot of tests, sure, he can continue to build tests, most probably no problem. Moreover, that also introduces more new efficient way for people to get into automation in the first place, and that is the way to learn automation is becoming more effective. The way to get into automation is far better. So existing way for a person to get into to become a test automation engineer is you would need to learn at least one programming language, and then well, you would need to learn a framework, something like Selenium or stuff like that. And then you basically usually will try to find a job, and you will be learning concepts of automation on the job, which is suboptimal, of course, and would affect people's performance, but this is often how it is done. Then, therefore, you'll be slowly building some tests, and then at some point, you'll basically just working full-time on test maintenance. A new way will allow you to become more efficient and will allow your employees to get into QA automation order of magnitude more efficiently. So first of all, you would learn basic automation concepts. You can do it within hours. Those concepts apply across the board, irregardless of what kind of system you use, be it Selenium, or NoCode systems or NoCode 2.0. It all doesn't matter. The basic automation concepts and best practices are exactly the same across the board. And then you quickly build test automation without programming. So you'll be able to use recording with plain English and so on. And then with no time maintenance, and in examples like testRigor, you would even be able to copy paste your test cases, either BDD style or post factum, to make them executable out of the box in some cases. And also, let's talk a little bit about use of AI. So it's all possible by employing AI to help people to write tests, help with element detections using AI and stuff like that, and help to create the tests and help to adapt to new functionality. And I'll talk about it in a second. So questions at this time? Okay, so let me proceed and show a small, simple demo. 1 second. So if you go to twitter.com, for example, let's create a new suite. And you would usually provide username and password. Let's generate some tests. It's another use of AI to help to create tests for you. And basically, you might not see it. I will be using the recorder here. As you can see, this panel is flashing. So I'll try to go for this part a little bit more quickly. Just click here and write some name, some email. It doesn't matter because we will change that. And some date. Click next, next, sign up. Okay, so in this particular case, we run into a blocker that Twitter thinks that we are a system, not a human. And let me quickly add the test case. so you can start seeing it. Okay, there we go. So we added the test case based on our steps. Let's cancel it because we need to clean it up, edit. And these are the steps that had been recorded. Here we need to do email. As you can see, it's everything as close to how you do it as is technically possible. Okay, so this is the, let's spell it last name here. And April, do another date in hopes that Twitter won't block us there. Again, this is not a test view. So this is what I'm trying to illustrate here is that there is a difference between a sequence of steps and a test. And one particular example here is this line. So this line will prevent the test from being able to go next time. You would need to use a new email every single time you run this. So let us fix that. So let's go to documentation and find the generate email command here. Back and replace this with generation. So we generated new email, entered it into email, save it as new email. And after that, we need to check that email to value email. So I'll kick off the retest, and while it is running, let's open up in here. Let me talk about what did we do in here. And one, I'm talking about the concepts which are across the board, regardless, like if you're using NoCode 20.0 or like Selenium. The same concepts do apply. So first of all, as you can have seen that it is a sequence of steps do not equal to a test. So you might need to modify it in some cases to generate unique data in order to be able to make it a test. So in order to be able to make it go through. Then there is also a concept of variable where you would need to save this uniquely generated data, in this particular case email, so that you can check later on that email had been received. And so there's a concept of a variable in here going on. So again, something you would need to understand and learn in order to be able to build tests. Well, and of course, basically learning the system and learning how to deal with everything that was quote unquote impossible to automate. Well, in this case, Twitter, of course, blocked us. But if it were to send an email, then it will allow us to validate that email had been received. And then the testRigor would render an email, and you'll be able to extract confirmation codes, then to use it, get back to test, use that, and so on and so forth. So like there is also concept of grabbing stuff from the screen and many other things in there. Okay, so these are the main concepts of testRigor, and once again, as the main point stays, and the main point here is actually people don't realize, but we spend order of magnitude more time maintaining their tests, and that's because we relied on details of implementation. If you abstract away and you are doing it purely from a user's perspective in the same way how you would write your steps in your manual test case, then you'll be able to avoid the vast majority, specifically 99.5% of test maintenance, and therefore saves the time to be able to build more tests in the first place. That's not only that, so let me show you another exceptionally important feature which helps our customers a lot. And let's get those steps and copy them, go to reusable rules and give those steps a name, call it fill out the forms. When we save and replace, it found those steps in just one test. It could be multiple. Updated it. So now if we go to test case, as you can see, it is just this. It's a much simpler one. So what our customers are doing is they are going into their existing test cases, be it in testRail or any test case management system or Excel or anywhere, copy pasting their own phrases that they use themselves to describe how they get around the application under test. Give those phrases specific steps, meaning, hey, how exactly we do that, and then they literally just go in and copy paste their manual test cases into testRigor, and then with as little cleanup as it's technically possible. So every rule should be on a new line. It should match exactly how you specified it in reusable rules, and so on and so forth. Maybe additional validations are needed, maybe login is needed, and so on and so forth. So once the test cases are cleaned up, then it's just executable out of the box. And that yet another way how NoCode 2.0 system helps people to build test automation faster. Whereas literally no way you can build your test automation faster than copy paste of your existing test cases. It is even order of magnitude faster than any kind of record and place. And moreover, it will help you to keep your code clean, organized, and match exactly the terminology that it is used within those test cases, as well as improve collaboration in the team where anybody can review, modify test cases, contribute. Your product managers can give feedback if this is what they were expecting. And anybody can understand not only the tests, but also test failures. And let me give you an example. Here is, as you can see here, it's no messages in the mail. They're available after 60 seconds. Like it's very easy to understand what is going on. So you don't need to be an engineer in order to be able to understand this. Okay, and that, let me open it up for questions.
All righty. Get my questions. Harold is asking, would you be able to show it working on a mobile device or emulator?
testRigor allows you to run tests on web and mobile, including emulators and physical devices. Currently, testRigor itself runs emulators, and we partner with any system of your choice, be it browser stack, Lambda test, Source Lab, or anything else, for where you can run physical devices of your choice through testRigor.
All right. Roberto is asking, is this only available for web testing, or can it be integrated into mobile apps or OTT devices?
You can use testRigor for web, mobile, native mobile, web and mobile, and desktop testing. OTT devices, I'm not exactly sure what's that. I guess this is those code generators to generate the code, and we support algorithms which are used by those OTT devices, and therefore you can use those algorithms to generate your one-time codes in order to perform two-factor authentication login.
Okay. Let's see. Rami is asking which CI/CD integration frameworks are supported by this. Also, which test and issue management systems are supported.
Well, basically, any of the above. CI/CD is exceptionally important. testRigor integrates with all CI/CDs on the market. Basically, we break them out usually in two parts. There is the bash code, which is pre-populated already with all keys here and IDs here, in order you can just copy paste that into Jenkins Circle CI, any other literally system for CI/CD. And for Microsoft technologies, there is a PowerShell script which does exactly the same to work with Azure DevOps and systems like that. Now, if you look into errors, testRigor extract unique errors for you across the board for all the tests, which is another way we help our customers to save time. And as you can see, you can create an issue by default in Jira, because we see vast majority of our customers just use Jira for ticket tracking. However, we support several other systems, including Azure DevOps for tickets in there. And basically anything you can think of in terms of integration with test case management systems, such as TestRail, X-Ray, Zephyr, Azure DevOps itself, and so on and so forth, where you can associate test cases in those systems with testRigor, and once you run testRigor tests, it will set the appropriate status in your test case management system.
Okay, so Roberto followed up. He said OTT is over-the-top video viewers, individuals who watch video via any app or website that provides streaming video content like Apple TV, PlayStation, etc.
Oh, I see. So, we currently don't run Apple TV specifically devices. Like we just run just iPhones and iPads. However, like we are happy to work with you on any need. If there is a need to roll out those devices, you should be able to use just testRigor out of the box. And we should be able to support other systems as well, if you enable a pure OCI and AI-based working with the screen where we don't like even look into what's going on. So in theory, it could work with PlayStation. We do not have currently any interest to do so. And happy to chat to see if that's something which needs help.
Okay. Gary is asking, how are graphical changes handled on the web UI, like when the PTP form changed formats?
I guess to explain that, I need to explain how testRigor function by default and that pure AI mode as well. So let me pull up some form like this, for example. And as you see here, there is there is some text in there and some inputs with, in this case, kind of like a placeholder. It might not be necessarily a placeholder, where you can enter the data and similar thing for dropdowns as well. So the way testRigor works is relatively straightforward. It basically talks to browser or mobile device and like ask it to provide all visible elements on the screen. That includes currently visible on the view on the screen, as well as potentially visible if you scroll. And then we allow you to basically, we get the coordinates for all those elements, and we parse your English, and then we execute this English, allowing you to express different things. You can also say things like enter email enter something into email, and to create your account section. If there are multiple sections, each of them have email. And of course, there is a lot functionality to help you to work with tables as well, where you can say things like click on delete if you enable machine learning based classification. On a role containing SPK2, if SPK2 is a unique ID that you need in column actions. So this is a specific syntax in there, and then, or you can just say click on the second button on the right of SPK2 in order to address this. So this will survive changes to table rendering, such as changing this table from HTML table-based with TRs and TDs to div-based rendering, anything like that. And of course, as the way you specify things from a user's perspective will survive any kind of changes in the UI. So I'm not sure what PTP is. If you can, please help me to understand what does it stand for. I might be able to provide better answer.
Okay, we'll wait to hear back from Gary on that. Hitesh is asking about testing for accessibility.
Yeah, testRigor has built-in way to run tests, accessibility testing, as you can see here. So you can basically specify on what level and how to treat those accessibility issues. And the way it works is every time testRigor opens a page, it waits until page is loaded, and after it is loaded, then it will run all accessibility tests. And yes, of course, if you enable accessibility testing, it will significantly slow down the tests. And we cover like vast majority of the standards, like 509, WSAG, and so on and so forth. out of the box. You'll see what kind of classification do you get for an issue if there is an issue.
Danasakar and Benjamin are both asking about programming language. Which programming languages are supported, and is it purely cloud-based, or can you save test scripts locally?
I think we skipped one question. How testRigor has advantages over other tools like AdSelect.
Okay, we can do that one next.
Yes, so I'm happy to answer that. So AdSelect is this NoCode 1.0 tool. Right, so it does. The problem with the tools is that they hook up into details of implementation and make their implementation pretty rigid. So basically, like it will fail as soon as the implementation details of how your page rendered changes significantly enough. This is one. And second, it is pretty hard to adapt to new functionality. For example, if you change the way how you go and do your checkout flow, then, well, in case of AdSelect, you'll have to re-record all of your tests from scratch. In case of testRigor, it would be find and replace because all our tests are plain English, plain text. You can keep that in Git. You can do find and replace, like the built-in versioning is coming up and so on and so forth. Whatever you can think of, you can do with plain text, you can. Now let me get into testRigor supports all programming languages. The idea of testRigor specifically is that you express executable specification, and that specification is in English. Because testRigor is not a way to code things, testRigor is a way to help you to validate that your functionality function exactly as specified. So you create a specification. So how would you program managers are probably writing your specifications in English one way or another. It's exactly the same way in testRigor. You just write it in English because it is the specification. That said, like there are a couple of ways you can address some tricky parts going through your system. Well, first of all, testRigor will out of the box wait until elements will appear on the screen, and then will proceed. You do not have to do any waiting out of the box unless you know that certain things will take more than 30 seconds. It's a long-running job. You kick it off, and in a couple of minutes, it will return the data. So in case if you need to just sit and wait, there is a way to do that. Moreover, you can also pair it with until and say, hey, wait a second until a page contains certain value, and there's a lot of different ways how you can do that. So this is one way of doing that, and of course you can do like conditionals and all this kind of stuff. And on top of it, you can run full JavaScript on top of testRigor. If you really need to do something really complex, then you can do that through JavaScript. Eventually, we do plan to support all JVM languages in addition to just JavaScript. But currently, it's just JavaScript.
Okay. And did you also cover the cloud-based or whether you can save test scripts locally?
No. Which programming languages are supported, and is it purely cloud-based, or can you save your test scripts locally? So testRigor has a way to run tests on your local hosts, because testRigor tests are plain text, you can keep it in Git alongside with your regular code. And even though majority of our customers prefer to use us as SaaS, whereas some customers that deploy us on premise, that is also an option.
All right. We're going back to the previous question with PTP. That is Precision Time Protocol. It's a protocol used to synchronize clocks throughout a computer network. On a local area network, it achieves clock accuracy in the microsecond range, making it suitable for measurement and control systems.
Got it. So anyway, so like there is a question, will this work for mobile automation? The answer is yes, exactly same language would work for mobile automation. And let me get back to PTP question. How are graphical changes handled in web UI, like PTP form changed formats? PTP form change formats, it's still hard for me to understand. Let me try to Google PTP form, this special form. And not sure exactly what exactly meant in there.
Okay.
So you can enter your date time up to milliseconds if you want to, if that's the question. However, if you need to test a runtime system like that and just get down to check network latency, that your network latency is like 3 milliseconds versus 10 milliseconds, well, maybe you would prefer to write your test in C rather than in testRigor. testRigor is the largest value in testRigor is that it helps you to solve problems related to UI testing. So there's always the right tool for the job, but if you're testing any UI, it would definitely make a lot of sense to use testRigor.
Okay. Our next question is, what misconceptions are there around testRigor?
What misconceptions? Oh yeah, so probably the most common one is that testRigor is keyword driven testing. That is not correct at all. Let me show you some examples to illustrate what do I mean by that. Let me find something in the past. Yeah, so this is a good example of a test where you can see the, for example, update button is identical across the board, right? So if testRigor will just plain keyword-driven testing, you wouldn't be able to do anything. Moreover, keyword-driven testing, like Karate framework and stuff like that, relies on XPath and therefore exceptionally unmaintainable, and will just kill your tests with maintenance over some time. In testRigor is not a keyword-driven framework. It's a way that parses plain English to understand your way of expressing how to find an element. For example, you can say things like click update and change your password section, or click update below change your password, or click on a second update, click on a second update in the account settings section. Or if you enable machine learning based image classification, you can say things like click card, click map, and so on and so forth in order to click on those, or click user here, or click the first icon on the right of hygiene in order to click on the map. As you can see, there's multiple different ways to express like what to do, how you can refer to the same elements. And unlike keyword-driven testing, testRigor does not rely on XPaths. And on the contrary, it allows you to express sometimes in a very complex ways how to refer to an element in English in a way that makes sense from end user's perspective. So this is what testRigor is about: is explaining in English how to refer to that element in a way that makes sense for an end user. Like that's probably the largest misconception out there regarding testRigor.
Okay. Stefan asks, how does the recording work on mobile devices, either physical or emulator simulators?
We will be releasing the recording for mobiles sometime this or early next year. Currently, for mobiles, unlike web, you would need to basically just write the steps in English. It's still order of magnitude faster than writing Selenium. However, it doesn't yet have a record and play assistance for mobile specifically.
Okay. Does testRigor support JSON payload parsing, or a way to see a JSON format from an API call formatted in a quote-unquote readable format?
Yes, very much so. So if we go to documentation again and go to API testing, so you can call APIs, and then you can extract the data you need and save it as variables, and you can have several of those statements in API call using so-called JSON path. And the documentation on JSON path in here. So there's a lot of references and a way to validate your JSON path. But basically, it's analogous to how XPath related to XML, JSON path relates to JSON. So there is a way to specify in a structured way, a way dealing with with JSON and extracting data from JSON. And by the way, we also support mocking API calls, which works across the board, including both web and mobile. And it does it on network level, so that you don't have to worry that you reloaded the page and all your mocks are gone now. And of course, it is per test. You mock out API calls in certain tests, and it just works for that test.
Okay. Did you also see this follow-up question from Rami again? Which kind of token-based authentication is supported? JWT, OAuth, etc.
You can do any kind of authentication, including JWT and so on and so forth. If you do API calls, as you can see, you can provide any kind of headers. You can provide variables into headers. Moreover, you can run JavaScript in the browser in order to get some data, or you can extract data from cookies, local storage, session storage, and so on and so forth in order to get the data you need in order to be able to execute your particular call that you need.
All right, and I have one more question, which is good timing since we're at the top of the hour. Are individual licenses required?
Great question. Let me go to testRigor. If you go to sign up on testRigor, you'll see there are two options how you can use testRigor. You can use forever free public open source version. You have to be very careful that had not been designed for enterprises or any companies whatsoever, not for commercial use, because everything that you do there is public, searchable on the web, and posted on YouTube. All your tests, test results will be posted on YouTube and across the world. It is great for learning test automation and test automation concepts and bragging to your managers and colleagues how great you are in automation. If you are to evaluate the system for internal use, we have a free trial, which you can start. This is completely private. You can start private free trial. Nothing will be exported or showed to anyone. It's all private size version. And you can ping sales if you want to extend your 14 days to a longer period if that's not enough. So definitely, yes, you can try and use it online.
Well, very good. That brings us to the top of the hour. Any last words from you, Artem, before we wrap it up?
Well, thank you everyone for attending, and thank you so much for excellent questions. And I hope that testRigor will help you to save your time.
All right. Well, that concludes our event for today. Thank you so much, Artem, for your time and all your knowledge, and to testRigor for sponsoring this web seminar. And a special thank you goes out to our audience for spending the last hour with us. Have a great day. We hope to see you at a future event.